Shoegaze is just one of those genres of music that just resonates with a certain type of music fan, with its mind-bending, roaring washes of sonic clangor that I can only compare to having a warm hairdryer being blown against your face on a cold winter's morning. Shoegaze, whilst not super easy to define, can be loosely categorised by its obscured vocals, hazy guitar distortion, endless pedal effects, immense amounts of feedback, and of course its overwhelming volume that all come together to create a menacingly lush soundscape. For those not familiar with the genre, here's some standout examples to get you up to speed with some of the best shoegaze has to offer. While some genres can have their origins and genesis easily traced back to specific releases, such as doom and heavy metal originating from Black Sabbath's first two albums, or new metal stemming from Korn's self-titled debut LP. Are you ready? The birth of the shoegaze sound has never truly been corroborated or looked into in any capacity on this platform, so the source of the genre remains unascertained and unknown, and that's why today we will be applying the framework of what makes a song shoegaze and will conclusively find the inception of the genre. I promise. We'll start with My Bloody Valentine then, a band that are well revered as perfecting the shoegaze sound and redefining what noise meant within the context of pop music. They are seen by many as being one of the founding fathers of the genre, with their first truthfully shoegaze song being the thunderously abrasive You Made Me Realise, first released as a single in August of 1988. It is a stellar tune that would perfectly mark the source of any genre, but this is just the start of the shoegaze pipeline. As far as the first shoegaze album goes, I think A Primary Industries Ultramarine, released in February of 1986, takes the cake. While certainly not a project entirely wound around the shoegaze sound, I'd still say the majority of the LP delves into quintessential shoegaze textures, with its crazed distortion, blasting timbres of industrial sound, post-punk underbelly, and ethereal vocals. Just listen to these two cuts for example. It really is one of the more radical approaches to shoegaze that you'll ever come across, and I don't think its uniquely weird sound will ever be replicated. But despite this, it might be the first shoegaze album, but it certainly doesn't contain the first shoegaze songs. According to sources like Rate Your Music and many other music discussion forums across the web, London duo Kane are often accredited as putting out the first shoegaze song on 7-inch, with their single, When You're Sad, being released in early 1986. It without a doubt contains all the makings of an archetype shoegaze song, with its screeching fuzzy guitars, nebulous vocals, and overbearing volume. Kane certainly paved the way for bringing the shoegaze sound into the alternative mainstream, and they should be celebrated for such. But this is still not the first shoegaze song. Glasgow-based noise pop pioneers, the Jesus and Mary chain, have been ascribed the title of the ultimate proto-shoegaze band, with this label mostly stemming from their album Psycho Candy, released in November 1985. which provided the noisy, feedback-driven foundations of the shoegaze genre. Psycho Candy took an avant-garde approach to pop music, amalgamating 60s bubblegum pop sensibilities with unabashed, shrieking distortion, resulting in a sound that leaves listeners squinting their eyes from the sonic torture they're putting their eardrums under, while simultaneously still singing along to an incredibly catchy, early Beach Boys-esque chorus. These 6 seconds of the song Never Understand perfectly encapsulate what I'm postulating here. Despite this, Psycho Candy has never really been labelled as a true shoegaze album, and rightfully so in my opinion, as the album is more akin to the noise pop subgenre, a close relative of shoegaze, seeing as it is more focused on the dissonance of noise coupled with conventional pop song structures, rather than building an uncompromising wall of cascading ethereal distortion. Nevertheless, there is one song in this LP that does satisfy the requirements to be a shoegaze song in my eyes. That song in question is My Little Underground. Dense soundscape? Check. Monstrous distortion and effects pedals? Massive check. Overwhelming volume and feedback heavy riffs? Check. Vocals that disappear into a wall of guitars? Check. For now then, the Jesus and Mary Chain's 1985 deep cut, My Little Underground, holds the title as the first shoegaze song. Alongside the Jesus and Mary Chain, fellow Scotlanders and dream pop sensations, the Cocteau Twins, are also often lumped under the proto-shoegaze label, especially their 1984 album, Treasure. Whilst Treasure has unequivocally contributed to the shoegaze sound, with its lush and dreamy guitar whirs and entrancing vocals as heard in Lorelei, or through the shimmering riffs of Persephone, there is still something missing that makes these songs fall just short of being shoegaze. They're not quite loud enough. The riffs might be distorted and reverbed out like crazy, but they're never overwhelmingly noisy. And lead singer Elizabeth Fraser's vocals might be obscure and enigmatic, but they are never really swallowed by a wave of teeming noise, at least not on this album anyways. So, the Jesus and Mary Chain's My Little Underground still holds the title as the first shoegaze song, for now. But let's go back 1 year earlier to the Cocteau Twins' October 1983 LP, Head Over Heels. An album seen by many as one of the first true dream pop records, with the single Sugar Hiccup emblematizing the birth of this new lush sound, with its reverbed out production and tremolo abuse. Despite the project's strong leaning towards the dream pop genre, the closing track on Head Over Heels doesn't quite match with the rest of the album's gothic etherealism. That song in question is Musette and Drums, and this is how it sounds. One of my favourite songs of all time right here, and I will proudly claim this as shoegaze until my last dying breath. That scintillating guitar frenzy drenched in feedback and God knows how many pedal effects, Elizabeth Fraser's unintelligible hums buried in the mix, and that intensely brooding atmosphere that feels like it's going to swallow you up. Christ almighty, this is as good as it gets, and it's shoegaze in 1983. Let's travel across the Atlantic now, away from the UK, and all the way to Tucson, Arizona of all places, with the little-known Paisley underground alt-country act, Green on Red. For those very few that have actually listened to this band, you'll probably be scratching your head at the inclusion of this esoteric four-piece, as their sound is seemingly so incredibly far removed from anything even loosely related to shoegaze.
There ain't no free lunch today, but I'll buy you a steak. Suppose you really knew what's it all about.
Nevertheless, Kevin Shields from My Bloody Valentine, remember that little band from earlier? Spoke briefly in the Loveless biography about a certain song from Green on Red's self-titled EP, released in early 1983. He heaped praise on the song's experimentation with tremolo and reverb, which provided a massive influence for Kevin in evolving My Bloody Valentine's sound. The song Kevin was lavishing praise on was the EP's closing track, Apartment 6, which features this totally unhinged garage punk riff with heaps and heaps of feedback that sits underneath this quirky organ melody of all things.
I'm in the end.
It is a wildly unique song for 1983, with its zany song structure, awkward musical arrangement, and bizarre lyrics and delivery. But is it shoegaze? No. Proto-shoegaze? Definitely. That droning guitar loop is shoegaze, no question about it. But the riff in question sits so firmly below the rest of the instrumentation in the mix that it doesn't really engender any wall of feedback-drenched whirring, which is critical for a shoegaze song. Likewise, the organ and vocals completely frustrate the song's shoegaze underbelly. So for that reason, it can't be a shoegaze song. So then, Cocteau Twins' Musette and Drums, from 1983, still holds the title as the first shoegaze song. Staying in the States, almost exactly 1 year removed from Musette and Drums, post-hardcore post-punkers Mission of Burma from Boston, Massachusetts, released their debut LP, Verses, in October 1982. Most of the record maintains the spirit of early avant-garde punk experimenters like Wire. Or Gang of Four. But Mission of Burma does still stand apart from these innovators, as they instill their own complex, noisy, and even atmospheric textures to the mix. Track 5, Deadpool, epitomises MOB's punk experimentation in Verses, as the track is dominated by this inundating, feedback-heavy riff, with the song's longing lyrics being enveloped by a cascading wave of sonic melancholia, moulded by distortion and tremolo. Here's a snippet. A shoegaze track then? I think it might well be. It ticks all the boxes that a shoegaze song requires, and though it is clearly indebted to that post-punk sound, the track's dense auditory panorama and overwhelming atmosphere are what pushes it into the shoegaze genre for me. So then, we've got a new title holder for the first shoegaze song as it stands, Deadpool by Mission of Burma. Now then, we'll remain in the States for a little bit longer as the shoegaze pipeline shifts to the West Coast, all the way to San Francisco, with the virtually unknown band MX80 Sounds and their fourth album, Crowd Control, released in March 1981. The bulk of the album revolves around this noisy art punk style that flirts with the post-hardcore. But like Green on Red's self-titled EP from earlier, there is one track on here that sounds like no other on the project. That track is track 4, Obsessive Devotion. What is this shoegaze? Yes, 100% it is, without question. Somehow, in the year 1981, some 7 years before My Bloody Valentine's You Made Me Realise, this astonishingly obscure band from San Francisco produce a stunningly warm shoegaze track, brimming with divine washes of overpowering feedback, gliding guitar strums, and lyrics that melt away into a dense sonic landscape. Cracking stuff. Surely that's the end then. MX80's 1981 track, Obsessive Devotion, must take the title as the first shoegaze song. Well, not necessarily. We'll take a return trip back across the pond to southern England with Colchester's four-piece, Modern English. Modern English were known mostly for their new wave and post-punk material across the mid-80s. In particular, their one-hit wonder in the States, I Melt With You, that any Americans listening might recognise from the film Valley Girl.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
So you'd think they'd have very little to do with the shoegaze sound. However, their first album, Mesh and Lace, really stands apart stylistically from their later releases, with its genuinely unique fusion of genres that produce this gothic space punk sound. In particular, the track Gathering Dust, which was initially released as a non-album single in late 1980, and was only later slotted into the Mesh and Lace album CD reissue, stands out with its synthesizer-heavy space rock psychedelia, reminiscent of Hawkwind. It's noisy neo-krautrock dissonance that sounds like it's come straight out of an early 90s Stereolab project. And its pounding tempo, which is redolent of the speed metal of Motorhead's Overkill, for example. Some might disagree with me here, but I think this is shoegaze, especially the last two-thirds of the song. That blistering wall of fuzzy reverb noise, those distant hazy vocals, and all that fevered distortion and feedback make Gathering Dust a blitzkrieg of raw and impassioned sonic shoegaze aggression. As we near the end of the shoegaze pipeline, we part ways with the underground punk scene and move to the year 1977, with one of the biggest singles of not just that year, but of all time. The single in question? Heroes, by David Bowie. Robert Fripp's massively overdubbed flange guitar lines build this giant structure of uncompromising, synthesized swirling feedback. This, paired with a doubled up bass line and God knows how much delay and effects, create the archetype wall of sound, synonymous with shoegaze. However, it still falls just short of being truly part of the genre in my eyes. As undeniably brilliant as this song is, it lacks that innate etherealism that shoegaze is marked by. And also, Bowie's pop-centric vocals sit proudly at the top of the mix, which is the polar opposite to what you find in the genre. Vocals in shoegaze are used more as instruments to enhance a song's roaring textures, rather than providing any melodic depth, as Bowie's emotive lyrics and powerful delivery certainly do here. It is as proto-shoegaze as you'll get, and one of the most forward-thinking, innovative and original tracks ever composed. But it's just shy of being accredited the shoegaze title, in my opinion. But in Heroes, do you know who helped produce Robert Fripp's droning, gazy guitar loop? Well, for those that don't, that man was Brian Eno, who is a bloke whose influence on music is genuinely unparalleled. For instance, in the early 70s, Eno played in and produced songs for the band Roxy Music, who were one of the first bands to truly formulate the glam rock sound.
And as I was drifting past the Lord Reliant, I heard the stinky sign.
Likewise, When emo left Roxy Music, he managed to release the unequivocally post-punk track Third Uncle in 1974, a whole 2 years before the Ramones even came on the scene. It was a post-punk song that was pre-punk. Even in the mid-70s, Eno was already experimenting with ambient textures, way before ambient music was even really an established genre. But enough of the glazing. The reason I brought up Eno is for the first track, Needles in the Camel's Eye, from his debut solo LP, Here Come the Warm Jets, released as early as September 1973. The track has a blaringly loud, distorted and buzzing riff that just takes over the entire song, as well as shed loads of obvious feedback, a really deep climbing bass line that just adds more fuel to the song's relentless wave of sonic energy. And Eno's abstruse vocals are totally absorbed and inhumed by the relentless cluster bomb of noise that is this track. Is this the first shoegaze song then? Well, yes, 100% it is. It ticks all of the boxes required, despite being released nearly 15 whole years before My Bloody Valentine's You Made Me Realise. Needle in the Camel's Eye somehow manages to predate noise pop, dream pop, alternative rock, neo-psychedelia, and even post-punk, which are all genres that are seen together as helping mould and birth the shoegaze sound sometime in the late 80s. But somehow, Brian Eno defied this timeline, and the title of the first shoegaze song is just yet another feather in this man's already feather-loaded cap. What a bloke. Going even further back than Eno's Needle in the Camel's Eye, there are still glints and shimmers of the shoegaze sound here and there, across a multitude of genres. For instance, there's Faust's 1973 song Krautrock, with its 12 minutes of unrelenting droning reverb. George Harrison's hyperdense wall of sound in 1970's Wah Wah. The Beach Boys' swirling celestial dream pop in All I Wanna Do, from the Sunshine LP, released in 1970. Syd Barrett's psychedelic cacophony of noise in No Man's Land, also released in 1970 as part of the Madcap Laughs.
We under all, we awful crawl.
The Beatles' acid-soaked feedback and distortion in It's All Too Much, from their 1969 film score, Yellow Submarine. The Stooges' impassioned proto-punk explosion in 1969's Anne. Or maybe even the Velvet Underground's trailblazing noise rock experimentation in Heroin or Sister Ray across the late 1960s. However, despite coruscations of shoegaze here and there in these songs, they all still fall well short of being part of the genre, as they lack a consistently shoegaze approach. These songs all fail to indulge in the lush etherealism of the genre, often failing to create the torrential waves of thunderously beautiful noise that shoegaze has always provided us fans with over the years. So, that's everything for today. Thank you for staying with me for this long journey down the shoegaze rabbit hole. I would love to hear your opinions on my takes, any bands or songs I might have missed out on, as I'd love to get into it with you lot about one of my favourite music genres. Please like and share if you enjoyed, and always remember to subscribe to the Sing Swan Song.